why was she being shown a picture of her husband in what might appear to be a compromising situation that has nothing to do with her? And it was really extraordinary that she was called to give evidence at all. And in contrast, President Clinton, former president, but we call him president here in the US still, a courtesy title, was treated incredibly courteously.
Now, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have testified to the US House Oversight Committee earlier this week as part of their investigation into the disgraced late financier Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged sexual assaults. Now, the testimonies were behind closed doors, but the former Secretary of State spoke after the meeting that was held in New York.
I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet, that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me.
And here's former President Bill Clinton speaking after his testimony on Friday.
Though my brief acquaintance with Epstein ended years before his crimes came to light, and though I never witnessed during our limited interactions any indication with what was truly going on, I offered the little I do know in the hopes that it would help prevent anything like this from ever happening again.
Well, let's welcome to the show Sarah Baxter, Director of the Marie Colvin Centre for International Reporting in New York. Sarah, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Hello, Alexis.
What did we learn from the latest testimonials? I mean, they were behind closed doors, but are we going to get a transcript of what was said? What did we learn?
I think we are going to find out what was said, and I think a video will be released of both hearings in due course. But the astonishing thing, and I don't say it lightly because it's not something I usually say, is that this was almost a textbook case of misogyny regarding the treatment of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton. Now, why would I say that? Well, first of all, Hillary Clinton was first up in the stand, and when really she has had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell did come to Clinton's wedding, her daughter's wedding, but she was dating someone on the Clinton Foundation staff at the time, and came, as Hillary Clinton said, as a plus one. Apart from that, she had nothing to do with it. And yet at the same time, she was shown a picture, the famous picture of Bill in a kind of hot tub or spa situation, with some sort of blacked out girl's face in the background that appears in the Epstein files. And the James Comer, who's in charge of the House Oversight Committee, a Republican, said afterwards, she acted like like it was nothing to do with her and unconcerned, and didn't sort of express. Why was she being shown a picture of her husband in what might appear to be a compromising situation that has nothing to do with her? And it was really extraordinary that she was called to give evidence at all. And in contrast, President Clinton, former president, but we call him president here in the US still, a courtesy title, was treated incredibly courteously. James Comer said he was like a Southern gentleman, that he was very cooperative. There were various headlines saying that Bill Clinton declared Trump innocent, which is not the case. Bill Clinton said, well, Trump never said anything to me that made him think he was involved. But then Bill Clinton also said he didn't remember stuff, and that it was, he was, I saw nothing and I did nothing. I did nothing wrong, I think was the exact quote from Bill Clinton. But he was completely treated with kid gloves. He seems to have charmed the committee, whereas Hillary has been accused of shrieking. That seems an odd word. She might have been testy. I very much doubt she was shrieking, but let's see when the videos finally emerge. And, she was questioned about things like Pizzagate, which was a obsession, a MAGA sort of QAnon obsession about paedophilia, a paedophilia ring being run from the basement of a pizza parlor that doesn't even have a basement in Washington, D.C. And as Hillary said, was a sort of vile smear. So it was very, very puzzling to see this sort of tale of two hearings.
Sarah, I gather that during President Clinton's hearing, Donald Trump came up in conversation. Do we know under what context?
Yes, well, apart from Clinton saying that that Trump never said anything to him that indicated any wrongdoing with Epstein, Bill Clinton actually clarified something that has been sort of swirling around, which is what was the reason for Trump and Epstein's fallout? And this is very significant because it happened before Epstein was charged and is the basis really of Trump feeling the Epstein files have nothing to do with him because he broke off relations. The White House has said very firmly that Trump broke off relations with Jeffrey Epstein because he was a creep. Recollections may vary, as the famous saying goes. And Bill Clinton said in testimony that Trump told him that he'd broken off relations with Epstein. And, this is going back some time when the Clintons were more friendly with Trump. They'd broken off relations with Epstein, that he'd broken off relations with him over a land deal, which was indeed the original story behind their fallout, but it has since been sort of changed to present Trump as, morally indignant about Jeffrey Epstein.
And Sarah, before we go, of course, it's early in the morning where you are right now, but what has been the reaction as Americans wake up to hear the news that their country has attacked Iran?
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, it is early here, so people are only just beginning to react. But obviously, Donald Trump promised his MAGA voters that no more wars. He was going to stop wars, not start them. But this does look like a very significant, declaration of war. What else can you call it? And so where it relates to Epstein, funnily enough, is not on the sort of wag the dog basis that some people are claiming, but that a small chunk of MAGA broke with Trump over Jeffrey Epstein. We've seen this with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Representative Thomas Massie. Now, interestingly, Marjorie Taylor Greene is very hostile to this Iran intervention. Thomas Massie has joined forces with Ro Khanna, a Democrat, who he's been working with on the Epstein files, to demand that permission for this war, authorization for the war, gets brought before Congress in a speedy fashion. Because, by law, Congress ought to be approving acts of war. It doesn't always approve them in advance, so to speak, obviously, because you don't want to give away your war plans, but it should be convened quickly to discuss it. Trump loves to bypass Congress. But what struck me about the Thomas Massie Republican with Ro Khanna, a Democrat alliance, is that it's the same pair who have been holding Trump's feet to the fire and others over the release of the Epstein files. And so will another little chunk of MAGA break off? Trump always says, MAGA is me, MAGA is whatever I say.
Right.
And a lot of his supporters would go along with that.
But what we know, Sarah, from the polling is that any sort of military action against Iran is deeply unpopular among the American population. I think it's only got about a low 20% support.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about the MAGA base, the MAGA faithful? Are they more supportive of this military action?
Well, that's the distinction I'm making. I think that they were very, very hostile to Jeffrey Epstein until Donald Trump told them to forget all about it. Mm-hmm. And so most of them did, but a small chunk broke away. I think we'll see something similar with Iran. Right. I think there's a lot of confusion. And that's why I'm making that link, because already the same MAGA people who are challenging Trump over Epstein are already out all over the airwaves on Twitter and on X and on social media saying no to action on Iran. Will we see a further breakaway from MAGA over Iran? I think we will, because this intervention is very unpopular, at least at the start. Of course, how it winds up, how it goes on, is going to determine whether or not it's considered a success and a popular intervention.
Sarah.
So we'll see more breakaways from MAGA, but they love Trump.